All right, let's dive into a truly mind-bending idea today. What if the water spiraling down your drain, a massive hurricane, and a star collapsing into a black hole? What if they're all just different-sized versions of the exact same thing? I know, it sounds impossible, but a radical new theory suggests there's a deep connection that changes everything.
So let's start with something we've all seen, the vortex in a bathtub drain. It's just water, right? Under the simple pull of gravity and the shape of the drain, it just effortlessly organizes itself into this perfect, stable, spinning funnel. It's such a simple, everyday example of a system finding an incredibly efficient way to move.
Okay, now let's scale that way, way up. A hurricane. We're not talking about a little bit of water anymore. We're talking about huge atmospheric pressures, the rotation of the entire planet. I mean, the energy is just colossal. And yet, what happens? The system settles into that same fundamental spiral shape. The pattern holds.
And now for the final leap. Let's go cosmic. Imagine a massive star at the end of its life. Its own gravity becomes so powerful that it crushes itself, and in the process it twists not just matter but the very fabric of space and time into this final, inescapable spiral. A black hole is born. So you have three completely different phenomena, but one hauntingly familiar shape.
And this is the central question, isn't it? Are these just cosmic coincidences, or could these spirals, from plumbing to planets to dying stars, all be pointing to the same deep universal rule? To even begin to answer that, we have to get a little weird and completely rethink what reality itself is made of. Okay, so to really appreciate just how radical this idea is, let's be clear about why conventional physics sees these as completely separate worlds. You know, beyond the spiral shape, they're not supposed to have anything in common. On one hand, you've got your bathtub drain. That's a problem of fluid dynamics. It's all about things like pressure and viscosity. But a black hole? That's a problem of general relativity. It's about gravity literally bending the geometry of space-time. We're talking about two completely different rulebooks for two completely different games.
When scientists want to understand a fluid vortex, they use a very specific mathematical toolkit. They're calculating these special ratios like the Reynolds number, which compares a fluid's momentum to its internal friction, or the Rossby number, which is all about how important the system's rotation is. These numbers tell them the exact moment when chaos will snap into a stable vortex. It's a very specialized language.
And for a collapsing star? Well, astrophysicists use a completely separate language, one that comes straight from Einstein. They calculate a star's compactness, basically how much stuff is crammed into how little space, and its dimensionless spin. These numbers tell them when gravity's going to win the fight and the star will collapse. See? No mention of viscosity or friction. It's a totally different toolkit for what seems like a totally different problem.
So, how on earth could you use one language to describe both? You'd need a completely new foundation for physics. And that's exactly what a new model called single-point theory, or SPT, tries to do. It builds a bridge by proposing a radical new answer to the question, what is the universe?
SPT says the universe isn't made of stuff just sitting there in space. Instead, it argues that reality itself is a process. Think of it like the refresh rate on your computer screen. The image you see isn't static, it's being constantly redrawn, so fast that it looks stable. SPT suggests the universe is generated, moment by moment, from one underlying rule. This means things don't have permanence, they have persistence. A planet exists because the process is constantly recreating it, like a stable note being held in a universal song.
Okay, so here's the crucial link. If reality is a kind of process, a flow, then what's a black hole? Well, in SPT, it's not a thing made of crushed matter. It's an amplitude whirlpool. It's a place where the process of reality itself has formed a stable, inward-flowing vortex. Just like a bathtub drain pulls in water, a black hole is a region where the very process of existence is flowing inward. Things don't fall in because of a force called gravity. They fall in because they get caught in this cosmic current.
Now, if this universal whirlpool idea is right, the math has to back it up. Those different languages we saw, for fluids and for stars, they should be translated into one single unified language. And SPT claims it's found that mathematical bridge.
This table is basically the theory's Rosetta Stone. On the left, you've got the old languages. The Rossby number for fluids, the compactness for stars, they look completely unrelated. But on the right, SPT translates them into its own parameter, something it calls chi. And look what happens. A stable object like our sun has a chi value near 0. A super-dense neutron star is at 0.4. But when that neutron star is right on the brink of collapsing into a black hole, its chi value gets incredibly close to 1.
which is exactly where the theory predicts any system, whether it's water or a star, will lock into a permanent, self-sustaining whirlpool.
A unified theory is beautiful, sure, but for it to be science, you have to be able to test it. It needs to make unique predictions that standard physics doesn't. If a black hole really is a whirlpool and not a singularity, what observable clues should we be looking for out there?
And SPT does make several. It predicts that just before a star collapses, its wobbles should soften in a very specific way, just like a fluid vortex does. But the most dramatic prediction? Something called gravitational echoes. If a black hole has a finite core, like a whirlpool, and not an infinitely dense point, then it shouldn't be a perfect trap. Powerful gravitational waves could actually bounce off its core, creating faint echoes after the main event, a signature that standard theory says is impossible.
And beyond making new predictions, this whirlpool model also seems to neatly solve some of the biggest, most nagging paradoxes in physics. That infinite singularity at a black hole center? Gone. It's replaced by a finite physical core. The famous information paradox, what happens to stuff that falls in? It's not destroyed, it's just encoded in the complex flow of the whirlpool itself. By changing the fundamental premise, SPT seems to find simple answers to incredibly hard problems.
This quote really gets to the heart of the philosophical shift here. The illusion of permanence is a construct of interference coherence. Existence is information, generated frame by frame. It suggests we don't live in a universe of static things, but one of dynamic process. What feels solid and permanent to us is really just a stable pattern, being constantly and faithfully recreated over and over again.
Which, of course, leaves us with one last, really provocative question. If everything from a star down to a single particle is just a persistent pattern in this one universal process, then what does that make us? Is our own consciousness, our own life, also a kind of complex, self-sustaining whirlpool of information, just holding its pattern for a little while before dissolving back into the flow?